Coming up on Front Row, cutting loose with a pair of Broadway favorites. A new play explores 1960s radicalism through a modern lens. And Tony winner Kelli O'Hara offers a peek at her next Broadway turn. Welcome to Broadway.com's Front Row. I'm Paul Wontor.
And I'm Beth Stevens.
Front Row brings you an in-depth look at the stories and stars of Broadway. In every episode, you'll learn about the relationships, craft, and inspiration that go into the making of a show.
There is nothing like sitting in the theater and witnessing a live performance, and we're hoping Front Row will give you a little more insight into that experience.
First up is a reunion of two actors who started together 20 years ago and never stopped working.
20 years ago, so we're talking about the 90s.
Talking about the 90s, and you know what was different about Broadway? There was only one Broadway musical based on a movie. Now there's 10 on the boards. But that year, it was just Footloose. Based on the Hollywood smash of the same name, Footloose didn't earn much respect from critics or Tony voters, but it did find an audience and launched the career of two well-liked Broadway vets, Jeremy Kushnier and Jennifer Laura Thompson. For the musical's 20th anniversary, we brought them back together to remember the show that started it all. Happy anniversary, 20 years.
Thank you.
We're old.
Well, no. Yes.
No, we're not. We're still kicking it. That's what I'm proud to say.
Yeah. That's what I love. Both stars are indeed still kicking it. One block that way, Thompson is finishing her second year in the Tony-winning hit Dear Evan Hansen, playing Cynthia Murphy, a mom grieving the loss of her son. And one block that way, Kushnier is the king, ruling over the land in Head Over Heels. Although they both graduated to parent roles, they can clearly remember getting cast by director Walter Bobby as Footloose lovers Ren and Ariel. Do you always remember your first Broadway kiss?
I do remember the first. I remember the first time we kissed because I remember that we were in the two rooms at 890 Broadway and we were in the smaller room and we were working on it. It was probably just us and Walter.
Yeah.
I still we were doing the photo shoot here earlier today and we looking into Jen's eyes and it's like it never goes away. Like whenever I look into her eyes, it's always that same moment. It is. It's weird. It's like it makes me sort of tear up a little bit.
When it opened here at the Richard Rogers Theater, the current home to Hamilton was painted neon lime green to match the Footloose logo. The show launched many young stars, including Matthew Morrison, Orfeh, Anika Noni Rose, Christian Borle, and Hunter Foster. During the show's run, the young cast was cutting loose and partying on the town, but not everyone.
I kept trying to get you to come out with me.
I know, and I was like, no, I have to save my voice and I have to go home. But the cast partied a lot.
I think I hit on you like early on. I was like, oh, she doesn't like me. She must not like guys.
You gotta be kidding
That's
me.
the ego that I have. No, she might not be a lesbian. She just might not like you, Jeremy. By the time we opened, I was 23. We had my birthday party, which was...
Oh, yeah.
You remember they hired a stripper? And this woman rolled up and she had to be 50. And she came with her mother. Her mother is the one who drove her. She was giving me a lap dance and at one point she leaned in and said, "It's almost over, sweetie."
Oh, no.
The love story of bad boy Ren and daughter of a preacher Ariel was set to the same soundtrack hits as the film, using pop music to tell a theater story in a way that is now common practice. The show also featured jaw-dropping acrobatic choreography and some crazy 90s fashion.
I do remember I wore mustard suede leather.
You did. Those were unfortunate. But I also wore black leather pants that were so tight that the first pair they made me, they were like lambskin. And I was in the number one night and my entire ass split out of my pants. And I was just wearing a dance belt at that point.
It was the beginning of, I think, an era of very challenging choreography that was just ultimately dangerous to every person on that stage. It was becoming more and more about stunts and like, I didn't have to do it. I luckily did not have to do like the knee things. And
I love the
backbreakers. Blown out knees. Oh.
I did pull something doing a backbreaker once, but it was fun. It was fun.
Both stars stayed on board for the musical's entire 20-month run, but Broadway careers didn't necessarily come easily. Kushnier immediately signed on to star in the Broadway-bound swing musical, The Rhythm Club, which closed out of town before returning to Broadway in Rent in 2003. He now has 6 Broadway credits under his belt, including a leading role in the Cirque du Soleil spectacular Paramore. Thompson is also a vet of 6 Broadway shows, earning a Tony nomination the year after Footloose for originating the ingenue role in Urinetown, Town, and becoming the first actress to replace Kristen Chenoweth as Glinda in Wicked in 2004.
I try to tell this to all like the young people that I work with. It's like, as soon as the show's done, you start all over again, like as if you never did anything. And that's the one thing I didn't understand. Like I was like, oh,
when
we booked like a lead on Broadway? Well,
they just line up then, the next lead lines up.
Yeah, I mean, I figured you'd have to work a little bit, but I didn't figure you would be like, who?
Older and wiser, with chemistry to spare, maybe an onstage reunion of the Footloose pair is just what fans need.
We could do anything. We could still do Footloose. Look at us.
We could, you could be Vi. I'd be Vi and you'd be Preacher.
I'd be the minister.
Yeah.
I'd do it again.
Do that.
Yeah.
We should do that.
Let's do it.
Oh man, I would love to see them do a show again together.
That would be amazing. Well, that was a fun walk down memory lane.
You're welcome.
Now, let's take a look at something new. Stephen Levenson, who won a Tony Award for writing the book of the hit musical Dear Evan Hansen, is receiving the world premiere production of his play Days of Rage. It focuses on a group of young radicals who want to change the world.
The 1968 Democratic National Convention was flooded with anti-war demonstrators that resulted in a bloody clash with police that made headlines around the world. 1 year later, far-left activists made a statement in Chicago. This time, far fewer people showed up, and the result was brutally violent. The Days of Rage, as that protest was called, sparked Stephen Levenson's imagination.
The Days of Rage, it was in the fall of 1969, and it lies in this really fascinating moment between kind of that initial hope and idealism of the 60s and what that would corrode into in the 70s. And it felt like it was this turning point where everything changed.
It changed from idealism to cynicism?
I think there was a deep cynicism that crept into things and a real hopelessness. There was this moment in the 60s when people really did believe that change was possible, and then it began to seem like the system was actually unchangeable. There's that famous adage that Karl Marx had of, history repeats itself, first as tragedy and second as farce.
The farce in this case is Days of Rage, and though you might think Levenson wrote it as a reaction to the politics of 2018, that's not the case.
It might seem farcical or unrealistic, maybe, some of these things that are being talked about and thrown around within these people, but they're very real things that happened. I think at a time where the country was deeply divided, to see the extremes of what people would go through for their ideals.
And here we are again.
Yeah.
But he wrote this before the current political climate.
Yeah, he wrote this back in '09.
Levenson wrote Days of Rage before Dear Evan Hansen, but that smash success and his reunion with Tony nominee Mike Feist is bringing in young people, and this play is resonating with them. You were not born in 1969, so for you this is a period piece, but for some of your audience members, they lived through that period. So how do you sort of manage those different expectations from your audience?
It's very much a contemporary play. It's very much not something that would have been written in that period. So there is a kind of interesting tension between the people who were there, who remember it a certain way and are kind of viewing the play through the lens of like, is it accurate or not? And then the people like me who, I'm really trying to get at the feeling of it and the kind of the truth at the heart of it.
I think it's the central tensions of the play speak a lot to me as a young person going through this political time in our country. I think it's 1 minute like I have to make a difference, I'm gonna call all my congressmen, I'm gonna do all these things, and then the next minute all hope is out the window and what is our country coming to, and it's that wavering back and forth, and I think that's constantly switching in our play, how these characters are feeling.
Some people say that in a lot of Stephen's work there's a faux family, there's a feeling of connectedness either with the actual family or with people who are thrown together for whatever reason.
It's about people who made the decision to give up all the comforts of their life to live in this sort of ramshackle, rundown house and create a political collective together. So it is very much people who have chosen to be a family of sorts, and there's definitely a lot of the dysfunction of families in there as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
And they all have their issues with their own families that totally inform. Am I just describing basic psychology, but that inform how they treat each other.
It is very much a dysfunctional family play. It's, you know, it starts with this once family that's kind of been blown apart by events that have happened within the group that we sort of slowly learn about as the play goes on. And then the group is further rocked by these two outsiders who kind of enter their lives. Strange things start to happen in dynamics between people when they're pushed into a small room together, all sort of after the same goal, but in very different ways. And I love the way that those collisions take place.
I think it just goes to show you that human behavior is cyclical, and we can always learn from history and from people that have lived before us.
Hey Beth, what's your favorite Kelli O'Hara performance?
Oh, there's so many to choose from. Well, I like when she makes me laugh like in The Pajama Game.
I'm the total opposite. I love when she makes me cry, like in The Bridges of Madison County.
Oh yeah, you love that.
Kelli O'Hara is coming back to Broadway for the first time since winning a Tony for The King and I. She'll play put-out actress Levenson in Kiss Me, Kate. Here she offers an exclusive listen and her first interview about this new stage venture. So excited, you're coming back to Broadway.
Yay.
In another classic Broadway musical role, right? I mean, you are tackling a lot of the classics in your career.
You know, I've tried not to do two in a row like this, ever.
Right,
but this
try to do new and then a revival.
But this one just fell this way, and I'm glad.
Without you, my arms fold about you.
This song in particular is so beautiful and sexy. It's like one of the sexiest love songs, right? I mean,
that's kind of how I feel about it. It feels like she's really taking control of how she feels and admitting it and being okay with it and kind of saying that it's not easy, but God, I gotta have it. You know, it's nice.
Yeah, she's singing about her ex-husband. Obviously, Lily's singing about him, and it's kind of early in the show, and you realize like, oh, she is so in love.
Yeah, she's still pining. Sometimes two people really kind of put each other through the ringer, and they're magnets for each other. They get back together, and that's kind of how they are. And I like that she kind of shows her underbelly right then in the beginning, so that we know she's human and full of fire about him.
Haunt me, taunt me. I mean, the lyrics are so great.
It is a sexy song. I like that you think that.
In her 18 years on the Broadway stage, Kelli O'Hara has risen to become one of the biggest stage stars of her generation. Her latest project is the Cole Porter musical comedy classic Kiss Me, Kate, playing Lily Vanessy, a vain actress forced to partner up with her ex-husband to star in a touring production of The Taming of the Shrew. So in Love is obviously a very lush romantic song, but this score is actually really, really bouncy, and the character, this is sort of her most romantic, dramatic moment, but there's a lot of comedy.
She's larger than life. Of course, I want to try to put every bit of humanity that I can into her. I want to really get inside their love story and how they were as a couple when they were married and why they're both still hanging on, because obviously they are. I don't want it to be about two egotistical kind of combating actors. I actually don't want to throw actors under the bus here.
Right.
I want to really talk about the human beings and the good human beings they are, but they're in a moment.
So taunt me and hurt me, deceive me.
The last Broadway staging of Kiss Me, Kate in 1999 starred Brian Stokes Mitchell and Maren Maisie, the musical theater icon who lost her battle with ovarian cancer in September.
My real history with it, the one that comes to my heart right away, is that I saw it 20 years ago with Maren. The idea of doing it right now is even more special to me because when I left The King and I, she came in and she's such a hero of mine. I mean, one of the first shows I ever saw was Ragtime with Maren Maisie. And so kind of now turning circles here and stepping into what she was so brilliant at doing and paying homage to her.
Yeah, the whole community is grieving Maren Maisie, and this was definitely one of her great turns.
I mean, I can see her in my mind, and her hair flying out the windows and throwing things, and she was just so spunky and energetic. And I want to find, of course, my own take on it, and I think she would want me to. But just the idea of doing it helps me honor her in some way.
O'Hara spent her summer making her London stage debut in The King and I, reprising the performance that won her a 2015 Tony Award for Best Actress in a Musical. The lavish production, filmed on stage at the London Palladium, will hit movie theaters on November 29th.
I'm proud that we recorded it because I think it was beautiful. The sets looked, the theater kind of looked like the grandness of the sets. It all fit together so beautifully, and we just had it was a good company, and I felt like I was doing something new, even though it was something it felt very different to do it in 2018 than it had in 2015 in many ways.
The King and I also reunited O'Hara with friend Ruthie Ann Miles, taking on the part of Lady Thiang, which won her a Tony on Broadway, just months after surviving the accident that killed her young daughter and unborn baby. What was it like reconnecting with her and watching her do the performance and getting on stage?
It was beautiful. You know, I think Bart Shear kind of really forced her in a way. I mean, you know, to just get up and come, and she did. And I'm sure it wasn't easy, but she did, and she showed up, and she was gorgeous.
All about you, getting to like you, getting to hope you.
You said you don't really like plot out your career. Are there moments where you're like, wow, I just want to sort of live in the joy of something like this?
Exactly. You want to challenge yourself all the time to do a lot of different things. I find myself right now in my life in particular trying to take hold of my career a little bit and do more television and film. And in those things, I play very dark. I play mothers of 13 Reasons. I played a mother who had lost a daughter to suicide. I'm doing those things. I'm reaching into that part of my soul. I had a very heavy summer. You know, the idea that I'm going to go and do musical comedy for a while is actually not just a career move. It's going to be an emotional move that is good for my soul.
When she takes to the stage of Studio 54 next February, O'Hara will be reunited with Will Chase as Fred Graham. They first performed Kiss Me Kate together at a 2016 benefit concert for Roundabout Theater Company.
I just laugh anytime Will Chase walks into the room.
Because he's so ridiculous looking.
He's just ugly and stupid and not funny. And we have a great time together. We've worked together many times now, and we've done it for one night, like you said, and so we know we have the chemistry, we know the energy, and it felt worthy of doing it on the stage for a short run. And so Studio 54, you know, it's gonna be fantastic, and I hope a little breath of fresh air.
I can't wait.
I'm starting the deep breaths right now.
Thank you for watching our very first episode.
We hope you join us next time for your front row view of the best of the New York stage.